For Washingtonians, the Mount St. Helens eruption in May 1980 was a major disaster. Lives were lost, people fled the area in panic, and mud, melting glaciers, and debris swept down the river.
1,300 vertical feet of volcano were simply sheared off, and by a blast 21,000 times as powerful as the atom bomb which destroyed Hiroshima in 1945.
The volcano is more than 300 kilometers from the Canadian border, but people in British Columbia and even Alberta felt the effects. First, it came that Sunday morning as a blast wave.
Part of the blast wave bounced off an upper layer of the atmosphere, focusing its reflected strength on Victoria and Vancouver. The blast wave was just slightly smaller than the strength needed to knock out every single window in those two cities.
Ian Thompson was 27 years old in 1980. He had a young career as a geologist. He was paying close attention to the news out of Washington. Mount St. Helens had been acting up for months, venting steam and changing shape. A little after 8:30 a.m., May 18th, he was at his parents' home in West Vancouver.
And all of a sudden I heard a huge bang. And my initial thought was it might have been a train colliding down on the old PGE or BCR train yard. But no, it's too loud for that.
He thought maybe his sister had driven a car into the house, but he turned on the radio news and quickly learned Mount St. Helens had erupted.
My second thought was, gee, I bet you this is not good.
The eruption sent a massive plume of ash and smoke into the sky.
Communities to the northeast of the mountain remain in semi-dark under the cloud of ash and smoke.
Nearby communities in Washington, like Spokane, bore the brunt of the falling ash, but it carried on northeast into Canada. Places like Fernie, Creston, and Trail experienced darkened skies and a layer of ash covering everything.
It was that type of a feeling. It was just no sunshine. It was just gloomy, gray, black. It was scary.
Sandy Santori would go on to be mayor of Trail and then an MLA and BC cabinet minister. He says when the ash started to fall, everyone in Trail thought it must be a strange discharge from the smelter above town.
I recall that it wasn't like an ash from a forest fire. It was more of a dust. And when it got wet, it turned into like a mud.
More than 500 kilometers away from the volcano in Kamloops, Paula Kelly was a 22-year-old bookkeeper at the local paper.
I was downtown in the city, so you could just see it falling everywhere, and then you would see it all on all the cars. You know, everybody was having to clean their windshields and everything. And it's just like we were all thinking, like, this is so far away.
Britta Jensen is a geologist who has researched Mount St. Helens ashfall in Canada, surveying about 400 people who remember ash from the eruption.
In most places in BC, even higher accumulation rates, it probably wouldn't have actually been much more than the thickness of a credit card, maybe 2, so about 2 millimeters, 1 millimeter or so.
Jensen says compared to some of the volcano's larger eruptions over the last 4,000 years, 1980s was on the smaller side, and it's still active, building up again.
Mount St. Helens has this incredible history of erupting and erupting a lot. She builds herself up and then she blows her top. And we look at the record from her, and I could see another eruption happening in our lifetime, but maybe it's going to be 200 years from now.
45 years ago may seem like a long time, but in a geological sense, it's a blink of an eye. And it's only a matter of time until Mount St. Helens erupts again. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.